There was something about walking into my own house after a long night shift that always felt strange, like stepping into a paused life, like the air was still holding its breath until I returned. The lights were off as usual, the stillness too complete, too curated. I parked in front of the house, but before I even opened the door, something caught my eye. Just a crack in the garage door, barely an inch of visibility, but enough. There was an SUV parked inside. Not mine, not Jess's, and certainly not anyone who had ever parked there before. I just stood there for a moment, my fingers frozen on the doorknob. I knew every inch of that garage, every oil stain and shovel. This car didn't belong. I stepped inside, slow and quiet. Nothing looked disturbed at first. The smell of brewed coffee lingered in the air. Fresh, too fresh for someone who should still be sleeping. On the kitchen table sat a cup, not one of ours. A ceramic mug with the logo of some mountain resort in Colorado, half drunk and resting beside a jangling set of keys. I picked them up. The keychain was bright red, some local high school football mascot with the name Matt written on the back in fading Sharpie. My hand clenched just a bit tighter than I intended. Down the hall, the laundry room door was cracked open. A t-shirt was draped across the hamper, wrinkled like it had been tossed in a hurry. It had a tech company logo I didn't recognize. Definitely not something Jess would wear, or even bring home from work. My gut twisted into knots, but I didn't touch it. Not yet. That day, I went through our smart home logs. Jess didn't know I had installed deeper system access after the last update. She never asked how it all worked, just like the convenience of it. The logs showed door activity at 3:15 a.m. I was at the hospital then. She should have been asleep, but someone had come in, someone she let in. I bought a camera the next day, concealed it in a smoke detector shell, and mounted it over the hallway. She wouldn't notice it. She barely noticed the camera doorbell unless it rang. 2 days later, it caught her. Blurry night footage, enough light from the entryway to show Jess in an oversized hoodie, opening the front door and kissing a man like she was picking up takeout. A lean guy, short hair, didn't look familiar. She held the door open. He walked in casually like it wasn't his first time. It probably wasn't. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I had no intention of exploding, not without clarity and control. Instead, I drove to the bank and closed our joint account, transferring every dollar to a private debit account I opened that morning. Jess had never been good with passwords, and I'd been methodically untangling our finances for months, always in case of emergency. Now I knew what kind of emergency I'd been unconsciously preparing for. Over the next week, I acted exhausted, distracted, too tired for small talk or dinner planning. She didn't seem to notice, or maybe she didn't want to. Meanwhile, I removed all important documents from the safe, tucked them in a waterproof case, and locked them in a drawer at work. I canceled the spare keys I'd given her parents, redirected my mail, and even swapped the security codes on the back door panel. Every night, I watched her text someone saved as Matt and call him during her bathroom breaks. I copied every message using her cloud backup and sent it all to a private server I configured on my lunch breaks. I couldn't sleep anymore. Not well, at least. I'd lie there pretending, back turned, eyes wide open while she scrolled through messages she thought I'd never see. The images she deleted were recovered within hours by the app's undelete cache. She didn't just flirt. She sent videos, descriptions, fantasies, and plans. The kind of plans that didn't sound like someone unsure or hesitant, but like someone who had rehearsed, someone building a new life before burning the old one down. By the weekend, Jess was prepping for a conference in Rockford. She packed her best blazer, the one she hadn't worn in over a year. She even changed her hairstyle slightly, just enough to feel new to someone else. I offered to drive her there, but she declined too quickly. Said a coworker was picking her up. She smiled as she said it, and that smile told me everything. It wasn't guilt, it was triumph. She left Sunday morning. I watched from the window, sipping my coffee while she adjusted her earrings in the car's visor mirror. A different SUV this time. Same driver, still unfamiliar. I walked back into the house, every room quiet, every cabinet closed, but nothing was calm inside me. I didn't rage, I didn't cry. I started dialing. Not the police, not a friend, a number I hadn't used in years. Jeremy. He answered like he always did. Crisp, professional, with a tone that said he already knew trouble was on the line. Jeremy was a former forensic analyst. We met through mutual friends when Jess and I had just married. I hadn't spoken to him in a long time. But now I needed more than cameras. I needed clarity. I needed legal leverage. And I needed someone who knew how to trace shadows left behind in digital spaces. I think my wife's planning something, I told him. I have footage. I have access. But I need proof. Solid proof. I think she's about to try something big. Big like an affair? He asked. No, I said, eyes settling on the safe Jess had left slightly open. Bigger than that. He was quiet for a second before answering. Send me what you have. Everything. As I sat down at my computer to package the files, I felt something new rising in my chest. Not dread, not grief, but anticipation. Because the moment I called Jeremy, I crossed a line in my mind. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a man preparing for war. Jeremy didn't waste time. Within 2 days, he sent back a dossier that looked more like a criminal profile than something you'd expect from a cheating investigation. His notes were precise, time-stamped, cross-referenced, and they painted a picture of Matt that wasn't just troubling, it was illegal. Turns out Matt was a lie. His real name was Michael T. Harmon, a convicted fraudster. Jeremy found a sealed court record from Colorado where Harmon had been indicted for forging real estate documents under a different alias 3 years ago. He took a plea deal, received probation, and vanished. Now he was Matt. Now he was kissing Jess at our front door. Jeremy flagged a signature found in those old Colorado contracts, bold, looping, confident, and said it looked eerily similar to one I'd recently put down on our tax return forms, the ones Jess insisted I sign quickly because the accountant needed them yesterday. I remembered how she stood over me in the kitchen, tapping her nails impatiently, telling me it was just routine. But now those documents were more than suspicious. Jeremy suggested I get a handwriting analyst. I did. The result? A 94% probability the signature on that form was forged. Not just sloppy forgery, professional-level mimicry. I didn't let emotion cloud my next move. I hired a private investigator, a man named Ken who specialized in financial infidelity cases. Within 48 hours, Ken had Jess's location history mapped out like a weather radar. She'd been to Rockford 5 times in the last 6 weeks, each trip aligning perfectly with work travel or girls' networking events. But one visit stood out. She'd stopped at a private notary office, one that happened to be right next to a title transfer bureau. It didn't take long for Ken to get a copy of what she'd signed. The document was a quitclaim deed, Jess attempting to transfer the ownership of our second house, the rental property we'd bought 5 years ago, into her name only. My signature appeared on it, except, of course, I had never been within 10 feet of that paper. That was the moment my breath caught. I had seen betrayal before, but this wasn't just sleeping with someone else. This was setting the stage to gut me, financially, legally, personally. She hadn't just been planning a future without me. She was building one by erasing me. And yet she smiled each morning like nothing was wrong. She still kissed my cheek, texted me from lunch meetings, cooked pasta like it was any other Thursday. But I noticed how she never left her phone unlocked now, how she flinched slightly when I walked behind her chair, how she hesitated whenever I brought up anything related to taxes, the houses, or joint accounts. I knew I couldn't let her see what I knew. So I made my next move as quietly as my last. I staged a startup launch. I'd been in digital logistics for years and had enough contacts to make it real enough to pass. I rented out a conference room in the West Loop, printed business cards, even mocked up a fake investor deck with charts and legalese no one would actually read. I invited Jess to the launch dinner, told her we were entertaining angel investors and that her opinion mattered. She preened for hours before the event, tried on 2 dresses, and acted like a first-time girlfriend meeting parents. At the dinner, I planted Jeremy nearby with a discreet recorder under the table. Jess talked. She laughed. She even flirted. Not with me. but with the idea of becoming a silent partner. I baited her, told her that we'd need to move some capital around, fast. She leaned in and said, "If you need to move it under my name first, that's no problem. We can keep it clean." That was the quote. That was the nail. The next morning, I submitted the full package to both civil court and the Illinois Department of Revenue. The surveillance footage, audio recordings, forged deeds, phone backups, and notarized handwriting analysis. I attached a summary highlighting suspected conspiracy to defraud, property fraud, and tax evasion through identity manipulation. I watched Jess that morning like she was on stage and didn't know it. She hummed as she did her makeup, sipped the smoothie I made, and asked if we should look at vacation rentals for fall. I nodded and said, "Sure, maybe something remote." Meanwhile, I sent encrypted copies of the files to two attorneys, one for fraud litigation, the other for divorce. Then I made a separate call to someone I hadn't spoken to since college, Ron, a contact who now worked with immigration control. I didn't need them to investigate Jess. I needed them to look into Matt, or rather Michael Harmon. Within an hour, I had digital scans of 3 different business contracts under Matt's past aliases. One of them included Jess's email. Another had her listed as a witness to a consulting agreement that was never filed with the IRS. These weren't just red flags, they were sirens. The puzzle pieces clicked together faster than I expected. She wasn't just cheating with Matt, she was complicit in helping him set up a pipeline to siphon trust funds, launder consulting fees, and dodge taxation through a shell corporation registered in Colorado. One I later confirmed was receiving wire transfers from our family trust. That night, I pulled Jess's laptop from her bag as she showered. Logged in using the last password she hadn't updated. I opened her email. Inside was a chain marked Private Marcus Agreement. Not Matt, Marcus, another alias. This thread detailed how they would move funds from our accounts under strategic restructuring, quoting false legal advice, and included a digital contract Jess had electronically signed using my name. I printed it. At 2 a.m., I walked into my office and sat down, resting the stack of papers on the desk. The silence of the house felt artificial. The kind of silence you hear right before a building collapses. There was still no confrontation, still no shouting match or accusations. That wasn't the goal anymore. This wasn't about betrayal now. It was about containment, about winning the game she didn't even know I was playing. Because in just a few days, Jess would receive her first formal notice. A quiet summons, wrapped in legal terms she wouldn't understand until it was too late. And when it arrived, it wouldn't be me at the door. It would be her new reality, dressed in official seals and escorted by people who didn't smile. The envelope came on a quiet Thursday, slid into our mailbox by a courier who didn't even bother to knock. Jess found it first. She opened it in her robe, coffee in hand, and froze. I watched her from the hallway mirror as she read it once, twice, and vanished into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Muffled shouting followed, frantic calls, sharp whispers, and the unmistakable sound of her world beginning to crack. She had no idea that every document referenced in that envelope had already passed through my hands. Every forged signature, every hidden file from her cloud drive, every financial breadcrumb had been archived, printed, and submitted. The summons was just the opening shot in a campaign I'd been quietly building for weeks. While she scrambled, I acted. I drove the kids across the state line to my sister's house, protected by the court's emergency relocation order. Jess didn't know they were gone for good. When I returned home alone, the house felt sterile, lifeless. I walked past the kitchen where she used to hum while cooking and realized how artificial that piece had been. My lawyer submitted the final archive to the court, a curated gallery of her fraud. It included emails confirming fake consulting payments, voice notes plotting tax evasion with Matt, and audio from the investor dinner where she agreed to use my name to move money. Her digital fingerprint was on every piece. In court, Jess showed up looking composed. Crisp suit, dark glasses, feigned calm. That fell apart fast. The judge read the evidence chain. She tried claiming I had handled the finances and she was merely misled. But then came the audit trail. Funds rerouted to Colorado, Property deeds altered, and emails she had marked "Do not share" with herself as the sender. There was no escaping it. She wasn't an unwitting victim. She was the architect. A few days later, I met her father at a diner off the interstate. I handed him a USB drive. He opened a few files, then shut the laptop quietly. "I won't pay her debts," he said. "This is hers to carry." He looked me in the eye and nodded once, like a man who had seen too much to argue. That same week, I made clean cuts across every tie Jess had left. Changed phone numbers. Redirected her email to a cloned dummy inbox that filtered her messages into cold silence. I revoked her medical proxy, updated all legal permissions, and sent documents to every bank and insurance company flagging her as a non-authorized party. She was erased from the system, surgically, silently. I wasn't done. Our second house, the rental property she tried to claim, had been listed privately through a third-party holding company. I bought it back under a trust she didn't know existed. The moment the ink dried, her last financial play collapsed without warning. She didn't take it well. Jess started lashing out online. Fake accounts, posts accusing me of manipulation, theft, emotional abuse. Everyone was logged, traced, and linked back to her IP address. My lawyer filed for defamation and cyber harassment. We won a digital restraining order within the week. Then came the custody hearing. The judge didn't hesitate. With fraud, forgery, and conspiracy documented in color, the ruling was swift. Jess was denied access to the children for 18 months, with a full psychological review required before any reconsideration. I didn't respond to her messages. Not the ones begging, not the ones blaming. All of them flowed into a folder titled Noise. She tried to reach the kids, wrote them emails, left voicemails, even sent birthday cards through her lawyer. None reached them. The court-approved communication channel redirected everything to me. I logged them, archived them, and then I made one final move. I sent a copy of the full investigation to her employer. Discreetly. No commentary, just the facts. 3 days later, she was terminated for ethical misconduct. I heard from a former colleague of hers that she left the building in silence, carrying a box that looked far too light for someone who once called herself irreplaceable. At night, I tucked the kids in. Their laughter was honest again, their questions about their mother fewer and less urgent. Jess was fading from their day-to-day lives like a character from a book we had already closed. But she wasn't finished trying. She sent another message, a long, teary confession emailed at 2:13 a.m. I didn't open it. I already knew what was inside. Apologies, regret, and some twisted claim of still loving me. The message sat unopened, marked as read by my redirect system. It didn't need an answer, because soon Jess would realize there was nothing left to answer. Her access was gone, her voice muted, and what came next would seal it completely. The hearing room was sterile, almost too quiet, the kind of silence that hums in your ears when something permanent is about to happen. Jess sat across from me at the long polished table, flanked by her new attorney, the third in as many months. Her posture was rigid, jaw set, but her eyes gave her away. There was no fire in them anymore, just flickers of someone who'd finally seen what loss really meant. The judge took his time, sorting through the evidence chain again. The audit files, the notarized statements, the phone logs, her cloud backups, the private investigator's report, and a sworn affidavit from the notary in Rockford. Every inch of her scheme was laid bare. There were no cracks left to hide in. When it was all done, the court issued a final ruling. Jess would lose access to our children for no less than 18 months, pending a full psychiatric review and compliance with a structured reintegration program. She was stripped of financial decision-making rights, her name removed from all properties and trusts, and a separate civil case was opened for damages, one I had no plans of settling quietly. She didn't say a word as the gavel hit wood, didn't cry, didn't protest. But I noticed her hands. They were trembling. Back home, I finally listed the old house, the one we had built together, argued in, loved in. I walked through each room one last time before the realtor arrived, watching the way sunlight hit the floorboards she used to dance on. I didn't feel anger, just absence, like something had been scraped out of me and replaced with cold clarity. The house sold in 4 days. The proceeds? I opened a custodial account in our son's name, transferred the full amount, and locked it behind two-factor authentication, attorney-managed access, and quarterly audits. Jess would never touch a cent. I moved us to Austin by the end of the summer, bought a rundown Sprinter van, and spent the next month converting it into a mobile cafe. Every morning, the kids and I rolled up to a local park, served coffee and pastries from the side window, and watched strangers become regulars. It was simple, slow work, the kind that made my hands hurt in a good way. A year later, we were listed in two guidebooks. One called us the warmest van in Texas. I didn't even know we'd been reviewed. The kids helped every weekend, learning to count change, wipe counters, and make basic espresso. Their laughter came easier now. Their questions about Jess grew less frequent. When they did ask, I told the truth. Nothing dramatic, just enough. Mom made some choices that changed a lot of things, I'd say. But we're okay now. You're safe. I never mentioned what she lost. I never had to. A year to the day after the final court ruling, I checked the cafe's inbox. A letter had arrived. Not digital, but real, folded paper inside a simple cream envelope, with handwriting I still recognized instantly. I didn't open it for hours, just left it on the table beside my keys while I restocked cups and made lunch for the kids. That evening, when the sun dipped below the treetops, I sat in the back of the van, unfolded the note, and read Jess's words slowly. She apologized, not in grand, sweeping ways, but piece by piece. She said she regretted every step, that Matt had turned on her the second the investigation hit, that she had lost her job, her home, her reputation, and her parents' support. She begged for the chance to just talk to the kids. She wrote that not a day passed where she didn't hate the woman she became, that she missed our old life and didn't expect forgiveness, only acknowledgement. I finished reading, folded the letter neatly, and slid it into the small wooden box I kept in the van's cabinet. The label burned into its lid read, "Closed questions." Later that night, we set up the portable screen and watched an old movie under the stars. The kids sat on either side of me, wrapped in fleece blankets, eating kettle corn we made ourselves. The sky above us was clear and deep and endless. They leaned into my shoulders, laughing at the movie's jokes, quoting lines they already knew by heart. I didn't need to respond to Jess's letter. I didn't need to chase vengeance. It was already behind me. All that mattered now was the breeze, the flicker of the screen, and the two hearts beside me that never once asked why I stayed. They already knew I hadn't. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.